I had a near-death experience. We can call it NDE today. When I was in France, and I know that is real, and it was a beautiful experience. It's changed my perceptions and the way I see with the world, and then how I live in the world. And then I search for all this information online, and then there are heaps in English. But the thing is, I hardly find any in Japanese.
Okay.
So I thought, why not I make it, right? So today I'd like you to share anything, whatever you want to share, your story.
Hey Kaya and friends, I'd like to share with you an experience that I had, and this was in 2017. I was involved in a car accident that changed my life forever and continues to change my life. And I might close my eyes a little bit so that I can really tell it like it was. So I was the passenger in a car. My partner was driving a car on a high mountain road. And our car lost control when another car came into our lane. So we swerved out of the way, but we lost control and our car started to spin around on the highway. And we didn't hit that car that was coming, but we did hit another car accidentally. And when we hit that other car, we flipped our car upside down and we crashed. And our car landed upside down, so the roof was crushed and our feet were in the air. And where we landed was a concrete barrier. And so our car was like this on the concrete barrier. And then down here was a very steep mountain slope. So if we had gone any farther, we would have just gone way over the edge. So those are the details. But for me, I had a very different experience of that event. So even though it lasted, 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds, my experience goes like this. So as soon as our car lost control, something in me thought was 100% sure at the moment, we're going to die, we're going over the edge. And as soon as that thought settled in my mind in that split second, for me, time completely slowed down and I was not present. I was not noticing the car accident. I wasn't noticing my partner who was screaming. He had started to scream. And that slowing of time, I've never experienced anything like that before. So I'm explaining it the best I can. But the time slowed down and the next thing I felt was this real lightness that I've never felt in my human life before. We're all in these bodies that don't necessarily feel heavy, but I noticed, wow, I'm not in that body anymore and I feel really light. And it felt really freeing. I felt like I didn't have to use any effort to hold myself up, to and this lifting of me, my awareness, what I was perceiving, started to go up a little bit above the car. And once that happened, I completely lost touch with the accident. I lost touch with everything that was going on Earth. And I next found myself in what felt like a dark but very soft and comforting space. And I try and compare it to something like a cave, like a warm cave, where maybe there's a family of baby foxes or something like that, where it's very safe, where there's no distractions or interference or interruptions, where it's very silent, where it's almost pillowy and feathery, and you just kind of want to curl up and be comforted, be held in there. And I've never experienced anything like this. It wasn't like a dream in the way that you're light in the dream and you're kind of experiencing different stuff. I was fully awake. So in the dream, we're kind of like partially, we're kind of there. This, I was more awake than even being on Earth. And I don't know how long my time lasted in this dark space. But after noticing that soft lightness, I also noticed that there was some things that I didn't have, and that was tension, anxiety, kind of like a bit of a hypervigilance that we all have a bit of and don't even realize till we're not having it. Just the basic protection of the body and the observing of the environment. It was like I didn't need any of that there, and I had left all that on Earth. It was like I was feeling more, but more of goodness, and that massive goodness was blocking out these difficult Earth things that we always have. So once I started to kind of relax and float into that, I realized it wasn't just a place. It wasn't just a dimension that I had arrived in. There was this element of presence. So I didn't see any deceased relatives, angels, or higher dimensional beings, but I could feel the presence of what I believe were those things. And when I say presence, I like to make an example of if you're in your house and somebody's in the next room, but you can't see or hear them, but you watch them step into the next room. You know they're there. You kind of feel that there's a presence in the house and you're not alone. Well, this is how it felt in that space, but it was big. And so I even get chills talking about it because I feel like it was many, I don't know, angels, deceased relatives, masters, people on the other side who knew this space. And it felt also very familiar. I realized once I shifted out of my Earth self and I got a little bit oriented here, I realized that I'd been here many times. And that here I had this sense like this was kind of like a doorway. It was a bit of a threshold. This wasn't, oh, you popped into heaven, everything's perfect. No, this was going to be the beginning of going home. But it was enough of home to bring that familiarity and that, I'm back. I had a sense of coming and going from this place for eternity. And even when I say eternity now, that sounds a bit vague and a bit cliche, but basically for as many times as I could possibly imagine, I'd been coming and going from here. And there was also this sense of being known. The presence here, this massive presence, you might call it God, you might call it God plus all the higher beings all mixed together, this oneness that I started to reconnect to a little bit. They knew me so well. It was like when you are with your best friend, somebody that you've known for many years, and you can do silly things. You can, it doesn't matter. You don't second guess yourself. You don't wonder what they're thinking or if they really understand you. It was like being with that. And there was this relief that came. Wow, there's no one on Earth, even though there's so many people that I love and that love me, there's no one on Earth that really sees me and gets me to the degree that I'm understood here. It was like this family from millions or billions of years. And so again, time had slowed down and I was just kind of lingering here. And I got this sense that I was between Earth, even though I wasn't really aware of Earth. I could imagine it and call it, I didn't want to. and something even greater. It seemed like this was kind of like a waiting room for the universe, a waiting room for more. And so I don't know how long my inner being was there. I know on earth it was just a couple of seconds. Then the next thing that I remember now is I started hearing things again. I could hear earth things. I could hear metal, banging metal, people trying to help me and my partner out of the car. And I was fully back, was back here. And I felt very, very calm, very, very blissed out, very at ease. I still felt a good portion of what it feels like to be there. And so even though, we're upside down on this crash car, we've just opened our eyes, there's like a drop going straight down here. We don't know if we're going to move a little bit and the car's going to keep going. All those things would be probably, the most terrifying things of my life, I would think. And I was cool. I was thinking more about where I had just come from than what was going on here. What was going on here really didn't matter, because even if the car did topple over the edge, I was just going to go back there. So it was like, okay. And of course, so everybody else is kind of running around and calling police and ambulance. And all I could think of was, wow, I just got to go home. I forgot that I had one, but now I know, and I've got to tell everybody. And it sounds funny to say now, but it was that real for me that I couldn't wait. And so, once things kind of like settled and we got checked out by the doctors, we were actually quite fine physically, and I told my partner what happened, and that was the first person that I told, and the reaction was, looking at me like I had like 3 heads. And I realized right away, because I was still so blissed out and I was just saying whatever was on my mind. That's when I knew right away, okay, this experience that I had is probably not going to land very well with too many people, or it could be very misunderstood. So I should probably keep it to myself. And so I did that. I kept it to myself for the most part. There's a couple of friends that I know that are interested in spiritual topics and that do have a faith in more than what we can see here. And I did talk to them a little bit about it. But I do remember that at the time, even though they believed me and what I said probably resonated a bit for them, there was a real gap in the understanding of like the depth of really what happened. And so that was 5 years ago that this accident happened. And within about 6 months to a year, I had been contemplating about what happened, journaling about it, praying. That's not something that I did a lot of, although I have always believed in a higher power. And during that following 6 months to a year, I started to receive very strong inner prompts, inner pushes, excitement and anticipation when I thought of certain things, like making certain changes in my life. And as well, my nervous system, because it had been so rattled in the car accident, had become very sensitive. And that can be difficult to have a sensitive nervous system. But one positive thing about getting a sensitive nervous system is my body in that 6 months to a year started to become a real strong meter for, this is a good fit for me, this is not a good fit for me. And if I chose things, jobs, relationships, just even ways of spending my time, if I chose things that weren't quite the right fit, I became very agitated and uncomfortable in my body, where in the past, before the accident, I could have done all those things and just made it work, kind of thing. So that's a little bit about what happened.
Why it's happened to you in this lifetime? What do you think? Why you needed to experience the NDE?
That's a great question. I'm not certain I know the full answer to that yet, but I feel that one of my purposes on earth is to develop my spirituality And I think we all have that to some degree as a goal, but some of us that's like a really big life purpose. And I was very open to the spiritual world when I was a little girl. And that kind of faded as I got older, as society and community became the forces of life and dictated what was important. All these wonderful things on the outside world became the priority, and spirituality didn't 100% fit into that world, especially some of the spiritual I had as a little girl. And so it was really easy to kind of switch into being a mainstream, focus on school, focus on career, don't talk about any of that. Not too many other people are talking about that. It's probably not important. And so the memories faded. I believe that my near-death experience, my car accident, happened because I had lost connection with the importance of my spirituality. Again, it wasn't that I didn't believe. It's just that it didn't take a priority in my life, and I had a pretty good life. So I didn't really see the need for it. And for the accident to happen, this was going to be a big shakeup that would realign me with my purpose of bringing more from the spiritual world into my life, and whoever's around me that wanted to be connected to that too. And the presence of being there was like I was, in a positive way, just frozen in time. I did feel, however, that if I needed to know something, all I would have to do is think the question in my head, and the answer would also appear in my head. It wasn't a place, I sensed it wasn't a place where people talked or used language the way that we do here. It would be like you would think of something and then the answer would come. It was all happening inside.
Like all knowing, like that moment
Yeah.
of something.
At that moment, all knowing. Yeah.
You mentioned about the time. So after coming back, you understand the time is not like we are perceiving or experiencing on this ring, like the third dimensional world. So how can you describe the time to people?
Sure. Talking about time being non-linear sounds, even for me, that sounds really hard to wrap my head around. But I do know that it's true. One example would be if you have ever laid down for an afternoon nap, maybe half an hour or something, and you were super tired and you ended up having a really vivid dream where all kinds of things happened. You went here, there, maybe you had two dreams, you experienced what would be a lot of time. But then when you woke up, it was only half an hour. But it really felt like you were gone for quite a while. Yeah, it was like that, where you had experienced all kinds of things. It wasn't like a dream, but the time was like a dream. That's the best way that I can describe the time.
Coming back from NDE, how do you describe love?
The way that love was there was that the presence and the beings that were existing in this kind of love had the ability to love anything and everything that could possibly show up. So when I was there with them, I realized that they could see through me. They could see my history, and it didn't faze them at all. And the best, unconditional love that I've experienced on earth, from really sweet family members who do their best here. There's still that you might find out something about someone that they've done, and you might, interesting. You might get a bit of a jolt or a surprise. You might not be feeling love in the moment that you find that out. There can be some readjustments around that, but there would be like no reaction to anything. They would not be frazzled or disturbed by the darkest of dark information. They would be able to just observe it with complete curiosity, complete acceptance, maybe a little bit of a smile, because they know that only love is real.
If the source allow the evil side of us, or this something bad, allowed to exist, that means that they have work to do. They are doing their job, right? So there's no good or bad in a sense. So we just here just focusing on love and then trying to be good, rather than moving on to this darkness and evil part of us. Do you get the question?
I get what you're saying, for sure. So from that perspective, it's like a bird's eye view. Imagine you're at the top floor of a really tall condo building, and you're looking down and you see, people walking by of different cultures, dogs, whatever. And from where you're at up there, you can see that all is well. You could see something down there could happen, and it could actually be a real catastrophe. But even if that person walking down the street died, their spirit would pop back up to where you are at that bird's eye view, and you would, discuss life with them. And up there, it's more real. Down here on earth, where we have, like you said, the good things and evil things, and love and non-love, this is a way for our soul, our spirit, or whatever you want to call it, to drop in temporarily to a very forgetful land, where we forget everything that goes on up at that bird's eye view. Mm-hmm. Because up there is just love. But it's also accepted that in lower realms like Earth, there's love and the forgetfulness of love in order to learn and grow, and ultimately to actually expand in more love. Because up there, it's easy to choose love. Everyone understands you, everyone accepts you. But down here, when people are doing evil things, when we have evil parts of us active, love is a lot bigger challenge for us to hold that high frequency. So the evil, it's definitely challenging and terrible and extremely dark. But the potential for the expansion of new levels of being able to love exists here. And I believe that's why many of us came here, many of us who resonate with this kind of material. We came here to see how much we could love while we're here in the face of darkness. And that includes loving ourselves.
Yes.
This is a really dark time on earth for many reasons. Obviously, we've just gone through a couple of years of lockdowns. But even before that, there's a lot of very dark things in society and even in smaller communities that people are facing. The more sensitive you are, the more challenging the lockdown has been, and all these other things that we already had on top of the lockdown. I believe that people who are in serious depressions, or who have committed suicide, or are actively with self-harm, I believe that those are the sensitive, gifted, spiritual souls among us who have a nervous system that is a little bit more refined and can really feel the intensity of what's going on around them. And I don't just mean, not fitting in or getting bullied or something like that, which is really terrible. I mean, those people are sensing into into a field, an energetic field that we're passing through on Earth. So for anyone who's in that right now, there's no easy answer, but I would like to say that as difficult as it feels, and I'm in that group of people too. So, I'm really speaking to the family here. As difficult as that feels, if you are that sensitive soul and you can feel what's going on around you, you are very gifted. You are actually really needed on Earth at this time. And even if you're not somebody who can, who is in the position to be very active and out there serving, or really, you just spend a lot of time alone, that doesn't matter. You don't need to be out in the public and doing anything in order to really belong here and make a difference as a sensitive soul. And in depression, we can feel guilty, lazy. We can feel like we don't belong here, like we don't fit in, and that we're not making a difference in any way, that we have no purpose. And I really understand that. And at the same time, I would say to really hold on, because we forget our worth. We're not going to hear from society how important it is to be a sensitive soul, how important it is to have an overdeveloped nervous system. You're actually gifted. And so to remember that you came here into your human body, and before you dropped down from the bird's eye view, you knew that it was going to be a really dark time. And your soul, your inner being, wanted the chance to drop into this reality and make it through okay before you return back up to the bird's eye view, a little bit more refined. Like, I like to think of it as like a piece of coal or carbon dropped into a mine, getting all the pressure and returning as a diamond. And so if you're feeling that pressure, if you're feeling that depression, like even the word depression has press, you're being pressed. You're being pressed. This is like, for someone in the spirit world coming here and getting pressed like this, it feels horrible while you're here because we forget, but it's actually a huge spiritual opportunity.
Everything is an experience, and the experience is only the things we can bring it home. So it's coming to the end of the interview, but what is look like your future from now on?
Yeah. So I used to be a little bit more linear as far as, choosing my career, planning out the year, which is important, and now I feel like my intuition is more in the driver's seat than it was before. And, we're all connected to our intuition to different degrees. But now that I am closer with it, I will still make tentative plans. So right now I live in Africa. I live in Tanzania. I've been here for 2 years. I'm involved in a rural school in an impoverished neighborhood. But right now I live full time in the city because the Wi-Fi is really bad out there for work. So right now I have like a tentative plan. I'm going to be living here, working on some projects, and then also connected to the school and that kind of thing. But that being said, my intuition and guidance from the spirit world always will take the driver's seat if something else shows up. If I get an idea that's like a full body yes, if someone comes into my life with an opportunity that I would be a good fit for and would make the world a better place, I'll adjust those plans and I'll take that. A teacher that I had, just say before we go, a teacher that I had said to me soon after the car accident, she said, Amanda, sometimes we get funny ideas, risky ideas, things that don't make a lot of sense in this society, but they bring a lot of excitement to your now newly sensitive nervous system. Before your mind and your logic starts telling you all the reasons why it couldn't work, see if you can, as a spiritual practice, grab a pen and paper, write down the idea, and write down what you're going to do about it. Just one step. If you're going to make a reservation, if you're going to make a commitment, a deposit on a course or a trip or an opportunity, just go. Because people are going to live their entire life and logic's going to stop them every time. Yeah.
Because it makes sense. All the logical mind words coming from the experience they had in the past with the attachment of the emotions. So they remember how they felt, and then those fears and then anxiety comes to them, and then they stop. At the beginning was like, oh, I'd like to do that, but wait a minute, I remember. But the thing is, people are evolving. We're getting better and better. Therefore, I think those people who had a near-death experience, they exist now, and then sharing all those beautiful informations. It is like a gift for us to remember who we are, because that awakening is, for me, is like remember who we are and then going back to the source. It's not like it becoming something else, a superhero or superhuman, because we are kind of already. We just forgot.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So thank you so much for your time today. But if someone wants to reach you, where we can find you?
Sure. I have a YouTube channel, and you can find me at lionspirit1111, all small letters, all one word. And my email address is on the About section. If you want to email me about something, go for it.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.